Let's finish 2019's Drag Race off-season with a topic that everybody always agrees on: Drag Race All-Stars. Much like my two videos on Monday and Wednesday, we're going to go through the 5 best and worst rated episodes of the 4 seasons on IMDb, try to figure out why they were voted so high or so low, and just talk about them a little bit. I have to ask something of everyone that's watching. Please refrain from commenting anything along the lines of, but what about this episode? Let me repeat myself. The order of these episodes is taken directly from IMDb, where people rated the episodes out of 10. These aren't my favorite or least favorite episodes. These are objectively the most liked or the least liked episodes by a certain portion of the fans that may or may not reflect the entire fandom's general ideas. Though I would say that it's probably like 90% accurate to the general consensus. If you wished a certain episode had been mentioned, create an account on IMDb and start rating. Though, don't do it too much, they can kind of figure out when spam is happening. This video is not going to be visual. The only times you'll need to actually watch what's on the screen is when a runway is mentioned. I have to implement a change in the criteria of which episodes are eligible for 3 different reasons. Here, we're including every episode that had the queens compete in it in whatever manner. A, because there are only 32 episodes after we ignore the one reunited episode, and 2 clip show / reveal of the queens episodes, so there isn't much to choose from. B, in all 4 seasons, to an extent, the finale was still competitive for one reason or the other. On All Stars 1, given that episode 5 had no elimination, episode 6 was kind of a continuation of it. On All Stars 2, it really seemed like Alaska, Detox, and Katya were fighting for the crown in Reggie Rochu. Roxy was there too. On All Stars 3, we had the whole twist of the eliminated queens voting for the top 2, so the queens still had to kind of sort of compete to get the jury to vote for them and not their competitors. And on All Stars 4, given that the top 2 chosen was not statistically the season's top 2, once we exclude Manila of course, we can kind of imagine that the song in the final runway carried some weight to the final decision. And C, 3 of the 4 finale episodes, as well as the Lollapalooza episode, which technically isn't a competitive episode because all of the queens that are in the competition are not competing, and also the queens either stay or go in the episode, the positions are binary, you're either a 0 or a 1, are present amongst the top 5 or the bottom 5. Let's begin with the 5 least liked episodes. We're starting with the bad so that we can end the video on a positive note, but also so that the people that are hate watching this feel some type of a way and leave a nasty comment which will give my channel traffic, but I will delete the comment, so that's a win-win situation for me. Speaking of a win-win situation, let's talk about All Stars 1's RuPaul's Gaff episode. Get it? It's a win-win situation because they're in teams and Alexis and Yara won the challenge, cause teams. Listen, it's not the best joke, but neither are most of the ones said in this episode. I guess. This is the worst rated All Stars 1 episode. I'm gonna be honest, I did not remember this episode at all, so I had to rewatch it for the video. The first thing that made me cringe was the In the Butt Ru mini challenge. Not the challenge itself necessarily, it's just like, we get it. Ha ha, things relating to dicks, ha ha ha. The queens for this episode have to do kind of like a version of a Snatch Game. They have to perform as celebrities in, I don't know, something, and tell jokes they wrote themselves. The whole story of this episode revolves around 3 things. 1, Manila and Latrice not really being the best pairing, even though they won the Maxi Challenge in the first episode. 2, Alexis, Yara, and Nina having it harder in the Comedy Challenge, just because of the minimal language barrier. Not to mention Nina doing La Lupe, who I assume nobody on Drag Race knew about. Ru certainly did not. And 3, Tammy Brown just Tammy Browning around. Okay, wait, no. I get why this episode is the least liked one by the fans. The Maxi Challenge is the least funny thing I've ever watched. And I watched Amy Schumer's Letter special. No, seriously, this was just almost 10 minutes of absolutely nothing being funny, but just excruciatingly painful. Pair all that up with really bad editing and production, and you get a long-ass challenge that took me half an hour to go through. There were also some jokes that would not fly in 2019. Apart from the challenge, the runway was nothing to write home about. The judging itself, as almost always on Drag Race, was abysmal, though this time it was called out by Tammy Brown. Add on to everything I just mentioned the fact that fan favorites in Tammy, Nina, Manila, and Latrice were up for elimination, and with the former two going home, you get a genuinely unwatchable, unenjoyable episode. The fourth least liked episode is the season 3 finale, also known as A Jury of Their Queens. We all know why this is here. The jury twist and what happened because of it. In all honesty, this episode, up until the last 5 minutes or so, is a really good episode by all Drag Race standards, and just reality TV show standards. I can even excuse the runway, which I'm not the biggest fan of, just because no queen looks regal, none of them to me look like they're put together enough to win a season of Drag Race, a sentiment embedded into my human brain harder after seeing some of the looks of the eliminated queens. This episode has conflict, it has a layer of mystery, we have an idea that in theory anyone could win even before we're told what the twist of the season is, and we get a really good follow-up to Reggie Rochu and Kitty Girl. With the reveal of the twist, the episode gets even more exciting because, and again, now more than ever anyone could win, and all 4 queens are still in the race. The decision of the jury proves how poorly this season was set up to be and ruins everything good that came before it. Had the queens known from the get-go that the eliminated queens would be the ones voting for the final top 2, the season and the game would have been one of the best ones of Drag Race ever, because the queens would have had to balance fighting to win a lip sync, but still being likable even though they had to eliminate other queens that will be deciding their future. Think of it as Survivor. At the end, all the people in the jury were eliminated by or because of one of the top 3, and instead of them voting for the worst player out of the 3 just because they didn't do anything on the show or out of spite, they pretty much always vote for the contestant who pulled the ballsiest moves and who, excuse the pun, survived. But on All Stars, given that the queens didn't know what was going to happen, they only knew that contractually they had to stick around for the final episode. None of them could have played the game that would benefit them here. If the queens had been told this, Dayla's behavior would have been dialed up to an 11, Morgan probably wouldn't have screamed that she was going to kill them all, and Shangela might have pulled bigger moves like eliminating BB or Trixie just so that she ensures that the jury knows that she was there to win and play the game. An aspect that's missing from Drag Race. Queens actually having strategies, pulling bold moves, and actually fighting for the crown. Sadly, we just got the statistically worst 2 queens in the top 2, and one of the faultiest winners performance on the show-wise as a result. The bottom 3 ranking-wise, so the top 3 of this list, are the last 3 episodes of All Stars 4 in the exact order from the makeover episode to the finale. I'm mentioning them all together because we all know why they're ranked so low. It's because of the elimination of Manila. While I do share the opinion that these 3 episodes are bad, I wouldn't say that they are the worst episodes of All Stars as a whole, and I do believe it's a little unfair that they are ranked so low. The makeover episode, as any other makeover episode on Drag Race, has questionable judging, questionable criteria for the said judging, and, like most other makeover episodes, a questionable win and elimination. Instead of talking about everything bad, I want to actually, and for this episode only, talk more about why it's not so bad, or rather why Naomi winning and eliminating Manila is kind of the best story on Drag Race. Naomi, throughout the season, has said many times that she, more or less, started doing drag after seeing the likes of Manila on Drag Race, and she said a lot of times that she's her inspiration. Manila, who lost season 3 under questionable circumstances and underperformed on All Stars 1 because of Latrice, came into All Stars 4 still clinging on to Latrice, which ended up being her downfall. Essentially, it's a storyline 7 years in the making. It's also helped a lot by the fact that Manila, alongside Trinity, dominated the competition, while Naomi was always kind of there, never being an important player in the season, so the anticipation of having her in the top 2 and winning it was built up throughout the entire season. And just when the fans were expecting this fairy tale moment of Naomi winning and eliminating Latrice, making Manila's path to the crown even clearer as a result, we got a form of a double turn. So in wrestling, a double turn signifies a good character and a bad character going into a story and leaving the said story with the roles reversed. In this instance, the student in Naomi has become the master, the underdog in Naomi has become the most tactical queen of the season. It's brilliant. In the other 2 episodes, I'm gonna tear them a new one. Well, more like redo it, cause I'm not gonna say anything new. The acting challenge in the Sex and the Kitty Girl episode is one of the worst ones ever on Drag Race, and that's saying a lot. The bit with the clowns at the end is borderline humiliating, and I feel bad for Latrice, Monet, Monique, Naomi, and Trinity. This episode wasn't even exciting or like, oh my god, who's gonna be the top 4? Like, we all knew Latrice was getting eliminated this episode. From the moment Manila went home, we knew who the top 4 was going to be and who was winning the season. Well, we knew Trinity was winning, so there was no suspense or anything interesting happening. Even the runway was confusing. Not the runway's theme, but the girls' execution of it. They had to basically do some sort of a cat look, and the interpretations were weird. Latrice went with being a lion, so like a king of all animals, so she had all these different animals on her dress, which again was confusing. Like, just be a cat, it's not a hard category. Monet went with Pink Panther, which is a great choice, but her execution of it made her look a little piggy and not completely finished. Monique was really the only one that nailed it completely with her Puss in the Boots look, which doesn't just answer the runway's theme, isn't just incredibly done, but it's also a nice little play on words, as in like puss, kitty, pussies, vaginas, vagines, you get it. Naomi went with Cat Lady for some reason. And Trinity was just cosplaying a story from WrestleMania 15. But the finale... oh lordy lord. The Super Queen performance was underwhelming because each queen got barely 20 seconds on the track. The track was also slowed and they made it more acoustic, which sure did make it a little kind of chill, witchy sounding or whatever. But then the queens didn't do anything special for the performance. It seemed very like pulling ideas out of a hat kind of a gig. Furthermore, given that the episode did not have a twist, it was just like 15 minutes of padding until we got the actual part we cared about, the choice for the final lip sync and the winner. The judging was also very confusing to me, because it was quite clear who the production chose for the top 2, and it reflected in what the queens were told. Now, the double win. I don't know, it's weird. We can imagine that it was planned because, you know, each winner got 100k, so that had to have been planned, but then they didn't film a double crowning, possibly not to tip the queens off that there might actually be one, but then on the other hand, why have a double crowning with Monet instead of Monique? Competition-wise, why even have a double crowning? It's... we all know why it happened, but we're not gonna talk about it. It's been discussed many a time on here, which is why the episode is the lowest rated episode of All Stars and altogether of RuPaul's Drag Race. Now let's look at the 5 best rated episodes. In the 5th spot, we have the RuPaul Supergroup episode, which is the season 2 finale. We know why this is here. It's because of the Reggie Rocher performance. The episode in itself is just a lot of padding until we got to that moment, with the queens rehearsing for the performance admittedly being kind of fun, especially when Katya goes to do her bit and Alaska talks see that they might be fucked, and the banter between Alaska and Katya in the workroom before the said performance. But really, the episode is just here for the girls killing the main performance. Lollapalooza being in the 4th spot shows us that the fans respond very well to the episodes which are just about the queens' talents, skills, and abilities, and the relationships between them. Surprise, surprise. The premise is very simple. RuPaul saves Valentina from getting eliminated and puts Monique up for elimination in episode 5 just for the sake of absolutely nothing. He makes the competition unbalanced, with Manila and Monet not having to take part in it, and then the episode ends with 2 wrong decisions. Listen, it might seem like I'm being too harsh on the episode, and while, yeah, the lip sync between Miss Legs and Gina Gum deserves anywhere between 7 to 10 Nobel Peace Prizes, I didn't find this episode to be very good, primarily because of the premise and heavy production. Sure, seeing the show put such strong emphasis on performing through lip syncing is great. At the end of the day, it is something that's more or less required for a queen to know how to do for the show, while pretty much every drag artist ever did it at some point, but again, the production's involvement was just too much for me. Gia Gia and Naomi's lip sync not being a double shantay, even though they performed better and looked better than Latrice and Monique, is still ridiculous to me. Bringing Latrice back just cause she's Latrice is on the levels of, but it's okay cause you're Alyssa. And toying with Monique's emotions just for the sake of the show is very emblematic of what RuPaul thinks of the queens. I know some people are gonna say something like, but Gia didn't know the words. Babe, editing exists. And please, go back and rewatch that lip sync. Whenever you see Gia not knowing the words, as you say, take a peek at Naomi. That's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, great performances, really confusing premise and decisions. Much like the 3 worst ranked episodes of All Stars being from the same season, the 3 best ranked are also from the same season. All Stars 2, of course. I want to mention that all 3 episodes are Tatiana-centric episodes to an extent, given that she gets the B or like A2 storyline for each of them, further proving that Tatiana is a legend. The 3rd spot goes to that season's Snatch Game. First of all, and as I've said, it's a Snatch Game episode. Those episodes are almost by default good, but this episode is pretty exceptional. We start off after the first elimination of the season and the queens now knowing what the game is, possibly plotting how and what they're gonna do if they ever have to pull a lipstick. But we're also immediately hit with Adore leaving the show and her whole conversation with Michelle, who looked like she was going to steal Adore's lunch money. Honestly, good on Adore for leaving. This episode sets up the story for the entire season in a great way, and in hindsight, foreshadows a lot of what's to come. I don't know if this was done deliberately, like if the production and the editors chose to show us certain clips to again foreshadow what was going to happen, but it's still pretty interesting and I wanted to mention it. What with Alaska winning this episode, Katya losing, Alaska Talks being the center point of the episode, Tatiana going home because of Alaska Talks, and even before we ever get to the runway and the judging, Roxy does Alaska for Snatch Game, while Detox and Alaska start applying similar makeup for the runway, cementing Alaska as the centerpiece of Alaska Talks and this season, and the one the other 2 will be turning to throughout the season. This episode also marks the beginning of the destruction of Fifi's character on the show, which to many viewers is well done, but I've always seen people see through it. I even made a video on why the entire edit she got on All Stars 2 was bullshit, so check that out if you want to. I'm not gonna dwell much into it in this video. Tatiana was given the hardest job for this episode, given that she had won the first Snatch Game ever, so she had a lot to live up to. But also, she was just in the top 2 the episode prior. The only way she can go from here is down, and oh boy, did she ever. Add on to her situation the fact that Alaska was in the top 2, and the rest of Alaska Talks was up for elimination, and her fate was pretty much sealed. Ginger was also in the episode, I guess. So, pair all this interesting storytelling and editing with some of the best runway looks from the entire show and a killer Snatch Game where even the unfunny moments were so bad that they were good, and you get a recipe for success. The second best rated episode is actually the episode before this one, so the first episode of All Stars 2. I remember how excited I was for this. I had just started watching Drag Race regularly, so I began mid-season 7, I watched season 8, and between season 7 and 8 I watched the first 6 plus the first All Stars. So my excitement for All Stars 2 was through the roof. Not the Mariah song, and many people felt the same way, especially when the cast was announced. There really was a certain sense of anyone could win, or at least everyone will put up a fight to win. Just the first 15 minutes of the Queen's entrances and the reading challenge is great. What with the shock of Tatiana being there, Ginger and Katya just coming off season 7 airing, half of the cast being from season 5, Fifi and Roxy being there looking for redemption, I can go on and on. Add on to this the twist of lip syncing for the crown and the Maxi challenge being a talent show, the minimal cons of this episode are quite negligible. The reason why All Stars 3's and All Stars 4's first episodes can't hold a candle to the All Stars 2's is the change from a talent show to a variety show. The talent show ensures that you have to show a certain skill that nobody could really replicate on the fly, that takes weeks, months, or even years of practice, that some people might not even be able to do, and most importantly, that just being entertaining cannot get you a good placement. It's expected from you to be entertaining, which, and again, is why this talent show worked. We also got Tatiana's the same parts in this episode, so that's a big bonus. As I've previously mentioned, Tatiana's story of her having to prove to the other girls that she's the actual competition is the A2 storyline, while the A1 storyline is the one about Roxy and Fifi fighting for redemption. We must, however, point out the cons. The critiques that Adore got, both from Michelle and Raven Simonier, were absolutely straight up bullying. And then Coco getting fucked over by the production, in the sense that she wasn't allowed to do what she does best, which is dancing as Janet Jackson, because they wouldn't pay for a 1-minute cut of a Janet song. The episode ends with Coco getting eliminated, but she gets a message from Ru telling her that a time for her revenge will come. And it comes with the #1 ranked episode of All Stars, Revenge of the Queens. I mean, we get a combination of the Alyssa Fifi storyline. We of course get a lot of fun drama between the queens, and all the workroom antics were fun too. Tatiana and Detox's stand-up routine was amazing. Watching Roxy try her hardest and still fail endeared us to her. Basically, watch this episode and you'll see what the show and the producers wanted or needed from each queen on All Stars 2. It's a great sort of Cliff's Notes version of the season. Other than getting the amazing lip sync between Alyssa and Tatiana, both of them returning to the competition, we also got both of them eliminating Fifi. For a regular fan, this episode is the most satisfactory one of the entire show, and it makes complete sense why it's the highest rated All Stars episode and the highest rated Drag Race episode so far. Do we think that the upcoming All Stars 5 or Season 12 can beat that? Honestly, I don't think so. But I do hope the 2 seasons are light on production and focus more on the queens themselves and what they can do. Either way, thank you for watching. Thank you for tolerating me for the past 3 months. I'm starting my 2nd year of uni on Monday, and there will be way less videos and they will mostly just be reviews. So, #FreeBritney.